Okay, roll call for House Transportation. Representative Banks?
Here.
Representative Geringer?
Here.
Representative Larson, excused?
Excused.
Representative McCann? Here. Representative Nicholas?
Here.
Representative Posey? Here. Representative Wiley?
Here.
And Chairman Brown excused, and Vice Chair Tarver.
Here.
All right, we have 7 present and 2 excused. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Donna. Well, with that, we will start off where we left off. And I guess we're not on to agencies. Is there any agencies in the room that would like to testify on Senate File 33? Hello, hello. I guess whoever would like to start, you know the routine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taylor Rossetti, Deputy Director for WYDOT. Real quick, you guys did hear his testimony about the purpose of the bill, I think, on Tuesday, so we won't rehash that. I did want to remind the committee that we are, in fact, issuing driver's licenses and identification cards. The voter registration thing, I think, is a very good tool that the legislature has chosen to use due to the access to the information that we have. I will point out that we do not issue a credential in the state of Wyoming for somebody who cannot legally be present here. Some of those people have limited terms that they can be here, but they have established lawful presence in Wyoming before Ms. Zimmerman will issue a credential. So no one in Wyoming gets a credential that is not lawfully allowed to be here. When we get into the voting realm, of course, what we're talking about is the establishment of U.S. citizenship, which, as you can see in the original bill, there was some language there that would say not a U.S. citizen. Initially, when we had looked at that, we had had some issue with the length of that entire phrase, that not a United States citizen. I think you see that there was an amendment in there that's a little bit unclear, and I think it says not a U.S., and I think there was some question about that as we talked through this last time. I think we've come to a conclusion here based on the way that the cards are constructed, and I do want to point you to the statute that we have open, which is 31-7-115. We're adding a Romanet 4. If you look at a Romanet single I, it's pretty prescriptive by the legislature, and that's not in the bill, but it is prescriptive by the legislature that we shall produce a card that is as close to tamper-proof as possible and that is very hard to duplicate. So because of that, the nature of the way that we build the card isn't as simple as just a printing process. There's multiple layers of different types of plastic that go into this that are pressed together, and then you actually are extracting from it, you're not printing on it. So because of that, it's not as simple as just changing a color or adding some terms or things like that. There's a little bit of a restructure of the card that has to occur in order to accomplish these tasks. What we've come to, and I believe we have a handout that you guys hopefully can see there, and I'll try to take a little bit of an explanation of this for you. We do believe that based on looking at this and working with our card vendor, that we could get to not a U.S. citizen on the back of that card in that location. And I do believe the one on the bottom, on the left side, on the back of that card on your guys' handout, is probably where that's going to reproduce the best and be the most clear. So the front of the card will remain the same. It'll look like everything does now, but it will be very easy at the poll for somebody to be able to flip that over and see whether or not the person's a U.S. citizen or not. So I think this seems to strike a compromise, and I think gets us where this body tried to be. I do credit Ms. Zimmerman for continuing to work with our vendor. This solution would be that lower fiscal note, which is that $67,000. When we started talking about some of the other proposals, it was getting up to between a quarter and a little bit more of $1 million in order to do that. So I just wanted to open with that, Mr. Chairman, and then Ms. Zimmerman can certainly field some of the questions that came out of the Tuesday meeting.
Committee, any questions? Ms. Zimmerman, please.
Thank you, Chairman Tarver. Members of the committee, my name is Misty Zimmerman. I'm the program manager for Wyoming Driver Services. As Mr. Rossetti stated, there are many complexities in this card, and I do think that in working with our vendor, this is the best possible solution. When you look at the bottom portion of the handout that I provided, that's the front of our card, and every single box on that card is already identified for something. When you make changes to a card like this, you also have to accommodate what it will do for the under 21 version, and that's what you're seeing side by side on the bottom of the handout. So obviously, the under 21 version gets very crowded. The over 21 version has a little bit more real estate, but then you start getting into where you get text bleeding together. So we really feel like the best option for this, if that is what the committee decides, is the back of the card. When you look at the not a US citizen on the left-hand side of the upper portion, one thing to note is an emancipated minor is someone who is under the age of 18. So that would only be on a card that is under the age of 18. So that not a US citizen, also in the Arial Black, which is a bolder print, would stand out more than it would on the right side of the card, just for the consideration. Chairman Brown had a question for me at the end of the last meeting about the -NR and where it originated from and what it's been used for. As far as I can tell, it originated sometime in the early 90s. And that was when some of the commercial driver license regulations were instated. And the federal regulation allows for Wyoming, any jurisdiction, to issue a CDL to a non-domiciled person. So a person that is in this country with lawful legal presence on a temporary basis. Your employment authorization card individuals. So those individuals are typically agricultural, have those types of things, and require a CDL to do the job that they're here to do. The requirement is that they are identified on the CDL as a non-resident or non-domiciled. And so that's where the origination of the -NR came. Assumptively, that is moved across to our non-commercial license as well for the purpose that we're discussing today. In addition to that, I do also want to point out to the committee that the card that we produce is only as good as the information at that moment. Circumstances change. Technology is a much better way potentially to handle this process because it could give you real-time information as to what is going on rather than the instance of a card when it was printed 2 years ago or 4 years ago or so on. So we would only update that information on a driver's license if we were provided that information by the individual. And for that, I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman. Is there any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Zimmerman, how many of these NR licenses do we have roughly in the state?
So I provided the information, Chairman Tarver, Representative Wiley, I provided the information to the chairman during the interim committee. And so this information is from November 21st of 2024. So we have currently right now in Wyoming, we have 2,969 temporary residents and 5,962 permanent residents that have credentials with us. That is out of a total of 485,000 credentials that we've issued.
Follow up? Nope.
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Geringer, please.
thank you both for being here. Appreciate it, and giving us some information. I guess the first question is, with the changes that would need to occur, is the January 1, 2026 an adequate amount of time for you to be able to implement?
Ms. Zimmerman.
Representative Tarver, Representative Geringer, we actually walked through this during the interim and requested that January 2026 for two reasons. One, we are in the middle of our modernization project that we've heard me talk about plenty, I'm sure. And second of all, we are looking at a new card vendor. Our contract with our existing card vendor is up at the end of the year, so it would actually be a perfect time to get to that.
Follow up? Mr. Zimmerman, I have one question. So on page 2, line 15, do we need to add citizen after not a US? And also line 8?
Chairman Tarver, there's some confusion about the amendment in the engrossed version. I believe the amendment said not US. And I believe the engrossed version came out as not a US. If the committee chooses to go down the route that we have provided you an example on, we would need that amendment.
Perfect. So we would need to strike that and put in not a US citizen, correct? Or add or subtract or divide it or whatever. Okay, thank you. Representative Wiley.
Ms. Zimmerman, I know I'm going to kind of ask a question that you've already answered during interim. I apologize, I can't remember. But I believe testimony that we heard earlier in the week, we'll probably see an amendment hit the floor if we don't do it now. What is the difficulties of changing this coloration of blue, green, blue?
Ms. Zimmerman.
Chairman Tarver, Representative Wiley, thank you for that question. If the committee can indulge me just a little bit on the process that it is to do this.
We've got an hour and a half, please.
I will not cut into your free time. So the Wyoming card that we are currently using is a polycarbonate structure. And what happens is that there are multiple, 12, I believe, layers that are all compressed together, and each layer individually has a different functionality. Polycarbonate does not allow you to print color on the card. It only allows you to bring the ink out of the substrate. So the ink is actually one of the layers, and then the laser is heated and it brings that ink out of the substrate. So changing any color on the card itself will require a new redesign of the substrate itself, whereas as the bill is written today, it just requires changes to the personalization, which is a lower cost to the department. When we walked through this bill originally, the cost for the change in substrate was $239,000.
Follow-up?
You can make it orange and black then?
Ms. Zimmerman, may I ask just a little bit of a follow-up from Representative Wiley's question? So is there anything we could do that wouldn't cost $239,000 that would distinctively, other than you're not a U.S. citizen in bold, is there anything that would really make it stand out on that backside? I'm not sure what the more bold, I'm not sure if colors, doesn't sound like we can do colors. Is there anything you can think of that we could do there?
Chairman Tarver, as I walked through this with our production or our personalization guru at our vendor, there are different fonts that we can use. Arial Black is one of them that will make it stand out. That's different from what your normal text would be. So there are different font sizes or text that could occur. We could also do some embossing. If you hold the back corners of your driver's license, either on the right or left lower hand corner, it's a tactile function that shows that. And that is also a security feature. It is something that we could do with the personalization. But again, I think with where we're recommending this be placed, it's the most prominent, most prevalent area for the information right now.
Thank you. Representative Geringer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know you talked earlier about how all of the spaces are already allocated on the front of the license. I guess my question is, do all of those have to be on the front of the license, or is there something that might be able to be moved to the back of the license and not create a big hassle for your production, law enforcement, things like that?
Ms. Zimmerman.
Chairman Tarver, Representative Geringer, we do have required placement for certain things that are set out by industry standard. The American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators routinely does a driver's license standard that all jurisdictions follow. So whether it's this place or this place, we do have some flexibility, but it's, as you can see from the handout, it is very much accounted for. There is some wiggle room with some of the things that we've also been asked to place, donor, medical alert, those types of things. But typically, the meat of the driver's license is prescribed by that standard.
Committee, any further questions? Well, thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Do we have any other agencies in the room that would like to testify? Do we have any citizens in the room that would like to testify? Now we get to the professional speakers. Hello, hello, Ms. Simmons.
Good morning or afternoon, Chairman Tarver and members of the committee. I've not been to this committee before. This is pretty cool. So I'm Gail Simmons. I'm from Sheridan County. I have a one-person organization called Civics 307 and another one-person organization called Why Vote. So me and the group are the same. I am on and against this bill, and I sent to you an email. So as I understand, the whole basis of this is we're really concerned that when an individual comes to register to vote, that the person who is checking on that will not realize that they're not a citizen. That's the whole basis of this, of everything that we need to do with this driver's license is because of a concern that an individual who is registering somebody to vote will miss what's already on the driver's license. So I sent you all an email, and I don't think we're limited on props here. So I just want to point out that this is the sample of the of what will come out for the driver's license. And down here in the lower right-hand corner is where it says, if you're just a regular driver, C-NR. And I would submit to you that the people who are registering people to vote are more than capable, with everything else they're doing, of being able to see this and realize that it's telling them this is not a person who can register to vote. So the other thing that I've heard is that, well, that's very well when they're going to the courthouse to get registered, but what about same-day registration? Okay, that's fair. In 2024, in the primary election, we had 6,584 people in the entire state who did a same-day registration and voted. That's 2.9%. In the general, we had 57, which is 0.02%. So all of those people that are coming in across the 23 counties are having to bring all of the documentation that's required in order for them to register before they're allowed to vote. Because remember, if they come in and they're already registered, they've already been checked to see if NR is on there. So what we're doing is spending a minimum of $67,000 because somebody is concerned that they won't read that says C-NR. So I get the concern about non-US citizens voting, but I would also remind you that the only time in recent history that we have had a non-resident, non-US citizen vote, we found out when the US Department of State informed us that we had an individual who had been issued a passport, which would not have resulted in a C-NR, they'd have been a C, and they had a passport. So the only person that we know of that's ever done this had committed the fraud at the US level, not at the state level. So this is a lot of money and effort and change and chaos when it's already covered. And by the way, in the 23 counties, the most number of people who have ever done a same-day registration was 1,002 in Natrona. And they have 46 precincts. So, it wouldn't be very many people per precinct. And I stand for questions.
Ms. Simmons, thank you. Committee, any questions? Representative Geringer.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Simmons, thank you for talking to us today. And so just to clarify, your issue really is about the cost of this implementation, or are there other factors that are involved?
Ms. Simmons.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Geringer, I have been active in the legislature for 8 years, coming down here as a participant in I probably shouldn't say this, but a 50-year registered citizen. I've never missed an election. I am tired of bills that are being brought through that solve a problem that does not exist. So my issue is, this serves no purpose. So I don't care if it was the 250,000 or 67,000. It serves no purpose, and it takes up your time and churns the Department of Transportation for no good reason, and that's why.
Follow up? Committee, any further questions? Ms. Simmons, thank you for
Thank
your
you.
testimony. Please begin.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Marissa Carpio. I work for the Equality State Policy Center. We've been in the state for about 30 years, over 30 years, working on fair elections and transparent government. I think Ms. Simmons covered a lot of the things I was going to say, so I'm going to try not to be too redundant, even though I know there's a whole hour here. It is scary to think that unlawful citizens or people who are not qualified electors are voting in our elections. But I will say instances of non-citizens voting in Wyoming is virtually non-existent. And the singular time that I know of that it happened in recent history, this bill would not have stopped it, as Ms. Simmons mentioned. Another part of our job is we work with Hispanic and Latino communities, getting them information to vote in their primary language, of course, only to qualified electors. So I've met and cried with people who are recently naturalized and can vote. This bill sends a message to those people that I don't think improves or builds upon voter access. I did get a message from somebody who was recently naturalized, and so I just wanted to share it. She felt that this bill was targeting her and people like her who spent years into the process trying to become a citizen and engage in civic duty. And it's not fair that it's targeting only lawful immigrants in our state. And I think that number was just about 6,000 for permanent non-citizens in Wyoming who receive those credentials. So that's $67,000 on 6,000 citizens. And that's 1% of our driver's licenses here. So she said that it's not fair that it's targeting only those people, and that's her family, and was up until recently her. And so with that, I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, committee? Yes, Representative Posey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a question. I know this all falls in line with election integrity, but do you know the numbers of how many non-citizens voted in this last election? Are those numbers available, or even in the last couple election cycles? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Carpio?
Mr. Chairman, yes. Representative Posey, thank you for the question. There has been only one instance of a prosecuted non-citizen voting in Wyoming, to my knowledge.
Follow up? Okay, thank you, ma'am, for
Thank
your
you.
testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to testify on this? All right, we will close testimony. No one online? We will close testimony. Committee, what would you like to do? Moved by Representative Geringer, seconded by Representative Banks. Shall we walk through the bill? It's gonna take a while. Page 1, anything? Page 2. Representative Geringer.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend on line 8, add citizen after US. And on line 15, add citizen after US.
It has been moved and seconded. Committee, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those against? All righty. Any further amendments on page 2?
Chairman.
Representative Wiley.
Mr. Chairman, you know, with the testimony that we've heard, I don't know if this not a US citizen is gonna be enough anyway, especially, you know, if we're that worried about this 1.8% of voters that could slip through the cracks. I think we do need to bring an amendment that would change the coloration of the card. Give it you know, 240 or 67,000, I believe that we should do an amendment to where we have you know, a bright pink, bright fluorescent pink issuance here.
Is that a conceptual motion? That we will do something like that?
Absolutely.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, we don't have no second on that, so are there any further amendments on page 3? Committee, what's your pleasure? I guess, question being called.
Okay, this is roll call vote on Senate File 33 as amended. Representative Banks?
Aye.
Representative Geringer?
Aye.
Representative Larson, left. An absentee vote of no. Representative McCann?
Aye.
Representative Nicholas?
No.
Representative Posey?
Aye. Oh, no.
Okay, no, Representative Posey? Okay. And Representative Wiley?
No.
And Chairman Brown left an absentee vote of aye. And Vice Chair Tarver.
Aye.
Okay, so we have 5 aye and 4 no.
Perfect, and with that, I had made her through, so I don't know who'd like to carry it, but I'm sure there'll be someone that's craving to have it. And with that, I guess we're adjourned.